Chapter 5 Assemble, Soldier, the Corporal calls. If the pages of my diary had been dated, there would be but empty space below the days of July 1914. However, there would not be enough room to record the events which happened on August 1st. That day was hot and sweltering. Feeny, Clara and I came from the moors where we had enjoyed a cooling swim. Our pockets were full of juicy apples which we had managed to steal from the trees along the highway. We were near the factory when we heard the sound of a drum. Running to the place where it came from, we saw 5 soldiers and a gendarme marching towards the city. This group came to a halt at the main entrance of the factory. The soldiers straightened their shoulders, clicked their heels, and one of them unfastened a bugle from his belt and blew the familiar tune, "Assemble, soldier, the corporal calls." All the workmen rushed from every direction. They looked like a troop of ghosts in their chalk-covered overalls and white masks. The fat gendarme heaved himself up on an empty box. He eyed his audience with severe importance and slowly opened his satchel. The men pressed closer. Feeny, Clara and I scrambled up on a nearby pile of lumber. We were just in time to see the gendarme remove from his bag a long red piece of paper. "War!" he shouted. "War is declared. War against Serbia, Russia, and France." There was a stunned silence. "War," the workman whispered. Then young Heinle, son of the foreman, threw his mask into the air.
Hurra für Deutschland!
He yelled. The rest took up his cry.
Krieg für Deutschland, für König und Kaiser.
The sound of the drum again brought silence. "Attention," commanded the gendarme, waving his hands. "Special orders from military headquarters," he read. Number 1, every man between the ages of 21 and 35 must appear before the nearest garrison for examination. Number 2, volunteers for the great German troops may present themselves at the same place. Absolute physical perfection is necessary. Number 3, the penalty of death will be inflicted upon anyone who cowardly deserts the German flag or conspires against the German army. Number 4, penalty of death for all crimes such as theft, or incendiary, and immoral offenses. Number 5, all foreigners must report at the city hall immediately. Number 6, any citizen who wishes to leave town must apply for special permission at headquarters. Number 7, no woman nor child may leave their home after 9 o'clock in the evening. This is the law until further order, he shouted, folding his proclamation. We had all been listening breathlessly and for a while no one said a word. The soldiers gave to each of us a similar red piece of paper and then marched on. With the rest of the children, we trudged along at their heels, waving our red strips of paper and enthusiastically shouting, "War! War!" People came from all corners. One woman snatched Clara's red paper and ran hysterically back into her house. At the embouchure the soldiers stopped again. With the perspiration pouring from under his heavy helmet, the gendarme pulled himself up on an empty beer barrel. Again, the bugle was heard, but Feeny, Clara and I did not wait for the announcement. We raced home. Each of us wanted to be the first to tell Mama. But the news we brought did not have the effect we expected. Mama burst into tears and threw herself on her bed. "Oh, God, have pity on these young people," she prayed, the world over, who sacrifice themselves in the name of patriotism. She prayed so sincerely that she made us all weep. We knew, however, that her own sons were in no danger of being drafted, for Franz, although 24, was studying in Denmark, a neutral country, and Felix was only 17. We all had forgotten about the seamstress who had been quietly taking in the scene. She moved toward the door, nervously wringing her hands. "Forgive me, Frau Hoffmann, but I must go," she stammered hastily. "I have to prepare and get ready for the time to come." I looked at her and wondered how this little woman with her tape measure around her neck would meet the emergency of war. "Oh, war is terrible," she exclaimed, grasping her head between her pin-pricked fingers. Her voice rose from trembling fear to frantic shrieks. "Why, I read in books where the enemy came, encircled a city for weeks and the people starved to death. Oh no. This must be dreadful. I must go right away and buy provisions. If nothing else, I must buy bread." With these words she rushed down the stairs. None of us, however, imagined that the enemy could invade Germany now or ever. I thought of all the powerful-looking soldiers I had lately seen in Neuburg, and I felt that the city was very well protected. Mama, drying her tears, said that she too had confidence in the mighty German army, but that she believed that food would become scarce, and the prices would rise. She complained about all the fruit in our garden which had to be preserved and that she had not as yet purchased a sufficient supply of sugar. For a while she made me think that there could not have happened anything worse to us than that the war had to begin just when we were out of sugar. Fanny had been sent to buy groceries, as much as she could carry. She returned shortly, but with empty arms. Every store in the city is packed with people, she said, out of breath. It is impossible to reach any of their counters. Everybody buys like mad. There is a large sign in each shop which says, "No citizen may purchase more than 5 marks of groceries." Mama became panicky and we all were frightened. Hastily, she gave each of us a 5-mark gold piece and told us to go to different stores and buy rice, coffee, flour, and sugar. Dragging Clara with me, I rushed to Regal's. There we joined in a line of pushing and agitated housewives. For almost an hour we listened to them telling one another how they planned to meet the situation. One told, in a confidential voice, how to salt meat away and another how to store eggs in a bucket. There was one woman who expressed her joy because her husband was past his 35th year, and another said how proud her neighbors should be because she had 4 sons, old enough to enlist in the army. I only thought how Mama was so very distressed about her preserves, and I could not imagine anything more important. When I finally reached the counter, I saw the whole Regal family hurrying distractedly from one corner of the store to the other, trying hard to wait on all their unexpected customers. Frau Regal, minus her usual obliging smile, scribbled figures on odd pieces of wrapping paper and shuffled gold, silver and copper coins into an open drawer. I asked for 5 marks worth of sugar and little Clara, standing on her tiptoes, pretended not to belong to me. She also demanded 5 marks worth of sugar. 2 heavy sacks were handed to us over the counter and with great effort we dragged them through the crowd. Once outside, I realized how impossible it would be to carry our purchases, so while Clara watched them, I ran home to get Feeney's little red wagon. Proud and triumphant, and feeling like heroes, we brought our spoils of the afternoon to Mama, who greeted us at the front gate, very much pleased, and she praised us highly. As the others arrived, each was again given 5 marks and sent out for more groceries. Clara and I raced with our little wagon to the store which Fanny just had patronized. On our way home we met the seamstress pulling her little wagon loaded with bread. "Hurry," she called to us, "the baker is almost sold out." However, I explained to Clara, sugar is so much more important than bread. Mama seemed to be overjoyed when we arrived. However, she said that her supplies were large enough and she did not permit us to buy some more. It was late that day when Papa returned from City Hall. We all would have liked to ask him 100 questions, but a deep wrinkle between his eyes told us that it would be to our advantage to keep quiet. Even around the dinner table not a word was spoken. We all were watching the intense curiosity for him to tell us his opinion. I finally came to the conclusion that, he too, must worry about preserves and groceries. Many times, I felt the urge to console him by telling about the sacks of food and sugar we had accumulated during the afternoon. This impulse faded, however, because whenever I looked at Mama, I saw her make large eyes at me. It surely was lucky for me not to have had a chance to talk. "It is a disgrace how the citizens of Neuburg have acted," exclaimed Papa, rising from the table. "They have not shown a real German patriotism. Instead of doing their share of sacrifice, they run like crazy people and stack food away." Throwing his napkin beside his plate, he shouted, "I do hope that my family has a better spirit. I do hope they show with pride that they are real Germans. The least each individual of the great Vaterland can offer as a token of patriotism is sacrifice." We all felt quite uneasy when he repeated those last words for the 3rd time. It seemed to me that each little grain of sugar I had carried home with so much pride became a mountain of sin and shame. I certainly was relieved when he changed his subject. He used very important phrases when he told us the war only would last 3 or 4 weeks at the most. Not only, he said, because of the strong German troops, but because the big bankers and manufacturers have power to settle this international conflict. He continued, what chance has little Serbia or France or even Russia against the great triple alliance of Germany, Austria, and Italy? His words were so convincing that we all believed that by next month the war would be over with glory and profit for Germany. Later in the evening, Grandfather Regal came with the report that Italy had not, as yet, joined the army of Germany. King Emmanuel's country had declared it would not be able to take part in the war because the Triple Alliance was supposed to be of a purely defensive character, and Italy accused Austria of having been the aggressor. You only know a real friend when you are in need, said Papa. Who could imagine that Italy, after having been allied with Austria and Germany for 32 years, would make a statement like this? However, it is Italy's loss because Germany will be the conqueror. Feeny brought her geography map and Papa spread it out on the dining room table. He marked, with a red crayon, the frontiers of Germany and Austria. The space he encircled did not seem very large to me in comparison with countries representing Germany's enemies. Papa, however, assured us again that in only 3 weeks Germany would be master of all Europe. I did not know how the rest of my German family slept that night. Clara and I were very restless, and until long after midnight we discussed, with excitement, our own situation. Being foreigners, we realized that the number 5 sentence, which the gendarme had read that afternoon, referred to us. What would happen when we reported at the city hall? Both of us had enjoyed the excitement which the 1st of August had brought to Neuburg, and we also thought that there might be a chance that schools would close during the period of war, so we decided to stay if we were given a choice. The next morning all Neuburg showed its patriotism by decorating its houses and buildings with flags. The Hoffmann home was almost covered with the black, white and red colors of Germany, the blue and white of Bavaria and the black and yellow of Austria. The whole family was gathered in the attic, where Papa, with great ceremony, tied a huge German flag to a pole. Children, he said with enthusiasm as he pushed it through the open window, before very long these proud colors will be the lord of the world. Hurrah, we shouted, and of course I joined with the rest. But then I remembered the Danish flag. What would happen to my beautiful Dannebrog and its white cross against the red? I thought and was frightened. Mama, Fanny and Maria were busy stacking rice, coffee, sugar, and flour into a dark corner of the attic. They were covering the sacks with large pieces of tar paper and placing mousetraps all around them. From another corner of the loft came a strong but delicious odor of smoked meat. Between 2 beams I saw 8 sweating hams and a variety of sausages hanging from an iron wire. Our attic was certainly a comforting picture. Looking from the pile of groceries to the hams and sausages and from there to the German flag, I felt safe and prepared for any war. Patriotic songs and shouts reached us from the crowded streets. From our balcony I saw that the Ambacher beer garden was packed with a group of hilarious young men, who had just returned from military headquarters. Among them were the 4 Heinle boys. Their new soldiers' uniforms looked too large for them and very uncomfortable. They were jubilant. They waved their guns upon which shiny bayonets were fixed, and recklessly they kissed every girl who came their way. A regiment was led to the station, headed by a military band. Die walked im Rhein, and in der Heimat de Gibbs ein Wiedersehen, they sang. People marched with them, waving flags and throwing flowers to the soldiers. In our garden were beautiful bushes of lilac and snowballs in bloom. Feeny, Clara and I tore their branches and decorated the warriors' guns and haversacks. It was then I saw the woman who had snatched Clara's red paper the day before. She was crying and the soldier beside her did not sing. When we returned home, we were exhausted and hoarse from yelling goodbye and a good luck to the troops. We found Mama pale and in tears. She was holding a telegram from my aunt. Franz has left Copenhagen for Germany, it read. Maria had gone to the city hall to carry the news to Papa, but before she returned another telegram had arrived. Hurrah, I am a volunteer. It was signed by Felix. None of us were able to find the right words which could console Mama, and I saw Papa also tremble when we gave him the telegram to read. An officer came to the house and handed Mama a long envelope. She opened it nervously, and I, standing on my tiptoes, read over her shoulder, orders from headquarters. However, Mama had called Fanny before I could read any further. She gave her a large bunch of keys and told her to show the officer all over the house. I was puzzled, but was not allowed to follow them. After a while they returned and the officer, pointing to the list, informed Mama that the house was large enough to room 9 officers and 35 men and that they would arrive that evening, each bringing a blanket with him. He gave Mama the list, clicked his heels, and saluted and marched out. Fanny threw her hands in the air. Jesus, Maria, and Joseph, sighed Mama, and sank into a chair. We all gathered around her. Maria took the slip of paper and read aloud, library, large enough for 3 officers, left front room, for beds, small back room, 2 beds, storeroom, 35 men. We were speechless. That day I missed most of the excitement on the street for I had to help prepare the house for the soldiers. In the officers' rooms we put all the mattresses and bedding we could spare and which we borrowed from neighbors. In the storerooms we arranged soft layers of hay over which we spread blankets and sacks. The flags had been taken down for hours when a transport train with tired men arrived in Neuburg. Quietly they were guided to the different homes where they were to spend the night. The small group allotted to us came with little disturbance. Neither did I notice their departure, for they had gone before I awoke the following morning. Fanny was already busy washing sheets for the new men who were to arrive that evening. Maria told me that one of the officers confided to her that he and his regiment were on their way to the Italian front. Papa, however, said that Maria must have misunderstood, because Italy was not taking part in the war.